Feel it coming in the air. Hear the screams from everywhere. I'm addicted to the thrill. I'm ready. It's a dangerous love.
Hey genderqueer chatters, it's Joe. It's Fridays with Joe, and today is week 102, and the subject today is, in light of Kai Allam's becoming the first Division I trans athlete, let's talk about gender in sports. What has been your experience with gender in sports, and as a genderqueer person, would you play on a men's, women's, or co-ed team? I never played sports. I'm not athletically inclined at all. As a youngster, I never played sports. I grew up in a family where there was, I'm Canadian, so my father played hockey. Most Canadian boys played hockey back in the day. And when we were little kids, I remember my mother saying to us, had you and your sister been born boys, your father would have taught you how to play hockey. You would be playing hockey. And it was just understood that this didn't happen because we were born girls. Not that we cared, because we didn't like sports anyways, but it was just weird that it wasn't even fostered, it wasn't encouraged in any way, shape, or form. When I grew up, I think I was 20, when I took up line dancing at a gay bar. I was living in downtown Toronto, all my friends were gay men, and they used to go on Monday nights to this line dance at this country bar. So I would go, and it was crazy fun, and I had two left feet, and I couldn't do it at all. And because it was a gay bar, it was men dancing with men, women dancing with women, or women dancing with men, and it didn't matter. Like, it was so irrelevant. I think I was trying to learn the two-step, and my friend Brent was teaching me, and he used to always call himself a bossy bottom, and he was okay with being the follow, and I could be the lead because I couldn't walk backwards, and I was very clumsy, and it was really funny that he was like, that's fine, I'll follow, I'm good at following, I've always followed anyway. So I still never really learned properly. Flash forward until when I was about 34, 35, I took ballroom dancing classes proper, and that is an extremely gendered activity, just so you know. Like, there were never enough men in the classroom, and men were the leads. So there was a girl that they used to get to do the lead, and she actually had Tourette syndrome, so she's just like snort a lot. She used to go, like when she would make kind of repetitive, strange noises with her mouth and nose when you were dancing with her, which I loved her to pieces, but it was just bizarre. Like, you know, you're up close and personal dancing with someone, and they're kind of snorting in your face, and it's a woman. And if you're not comfortable with that, I mean, some people weren't. There was never enough men in that classroom because it's ballroom dancing. It is gendered pairs, and I don't know what turned me on to it. Well, it was Dancing with the Stars and the British version, which is called Strictly Come Dancing. I just always liked dancing. I like music. I really like music, and I really like dancing. So I just wanted to learn. And that's probably about the most gendered activity I've ever participated in, is ballroom dancing. And really enjoyed. And actually, on my personal channel, there's 3 clips of me dancing with some guy at a street festival. If you want to check it out, it's kind of funny. I'm not a very good dancer, but I didn't care because I was having fun. As for just regular sports, I have extreme issues with sports in general. I have never played a sport or watched a sport specifically and only because they are gendered. And it makes me angry that, you know, golf is golf, and then there's women's golf, as if men's golf is the standard, the default, and you have to add the word women's if it's a women's sport. You know, that just drives me nutters. That the National Hockey League is just all men, and then the Women's National Hockey League, or whatever they are, the Women's League has to have the word women's in it. It also pisses me off to no end that men's sports garner millions and millions of dollars in endorsements, and women's do not. Just do not. I mean, you get your odd Venus Williams or whatever, the odd female athlete who's a superstar. It's really the exception, not the rule. And as a result, I have boycotted all sports under all circumstances, except for every 4 years I tend to watch World Cup soccer. And the only reason behind that was I started watching it in the early 90s when I lived in Toronto, and it was in Chicago that year. And there was an international flavor to it that I really liked. I really dislike North American-centric activities like the National Hockey League or, you know, the World Series. How come the World Series is only American and a couple of Canadian teams? That's not the world. The World Cup, on the other hand, truly is the world. I was willing to sit on my principles for World Cup in the name of the greater good, which seemed to be international, you know, camaraderie or whatever. But generally speaking, people invite me to a hockey game, I say no thank you. They say, why? It's fun. I get free tickets all the time to stuff, especially just because I was on a TV show here in my city. I used to be a talking head on a political pundit show, and I get free tickets from the station all the time, and I just give them away because I will not attend a sporting event that is gendered. It's completely sexist. It's not. I refuse to give my support to such a thing. I remember getting into a very big argument with a guy on my Facebook when Castor, I forget her last name, Castor Semenez or something, who was the marathon runner, or the runner, who was accused of being a man, and when they ran gender tests and hormonal tests or whatever, I think it was proven she was intersex. But I mean, mortified. She came from an African country where that's just, considered like the absolute scandal of the universe. And I do believe there was one picture of her on a magazine cover, all decked out in female clothing and makeup, and it was ridiculous. Like, it was just, why do you have to go to this extent to prove your gender? It doesn't even matter what your gender is. And I remember getting into this gargantuan argument with this guy who's a teacher here at the school board, because I guess they run like girls and boys sports all the time in the high schools. And I disagree with that completely. And I said, why don't you have, teams that are made up of both? Like, why don't you create a line of some other fashion, like weight or age or, body mass index or something? Like, why don't you have people who are the same height compete against each other, the same, weight? I don't understand why males and females, it's like that's the very first thing you think of when you're going to divvy up a team or create lines in the sand. And of course, he started arguing that is the biggest difference, that men and women have different bodies. And I'm like, well, what about intersex people? Like, that's not fair to them, that they can't compete in sports because they don't fall into your gender binary. It's stupid. Never mind that some girls are good enough to play on boys' teams. I hate that expression, but that's basically what it all boils down to, is boys are often given more ice time, they're given more support. More people show up to a boys' football game than to a girls' football game. If you're a male athlete, you're encouraged to be a good and a better male athlete. If you're female, you're basically a cheerleader in the stands a lot of the time. It's bullshit. It's complete bullshit. In marathon races, I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this, but it's won, like the Boston Marathon, the New York, whatever. Every single year it's won by, I think it's a Kenyan. There's an African nation that produces the most marathon runners ever. It's always I'm going to say Kenyan, I might be wrong, but I'll correct it in the notes if I am. A Kenyan man wins that race every year. Kenyan men.
Could we please have our grade 8 helpers? Thank you.
In light of that, whenever people talk about gender differentiation, I always say substitute for men and women, substitute black and white, and see how it sounds. So why don't you have a race where only blacks can run and whites can run, and separately, and see how awful that sounds. And why can you do it for men and women? Why is that acceptable? Or how about, and it would be argued with men and women that because men run faster, they're differently abled. I could argue that Kenyans are differently abled, and you need to isolate them out so that other people, white people, can have a chance, or other African nations can have a chance. I mean, it's stupid. It's completely stupid logic. And if you're going to allow people to compete, you can't draw distinctions that are racist or sexist. You just can't. And that was my argument when I got into it on Facebook with that teacher, and he thought I was nuts, and I didn't care. I don't know, again, chicken and egg, if I wound up kind of anti-sports, because I think I always disagree. I mean, even as a youngster, I think I really disagreed with the concept of genderizing it. I have a faint memory of playing ringette when I was a kid. I guess they had hockey teams in our school for boys, but the girls had to play ringette. And apparently I got put on a ringette team, and I remember scoring against my own team, like 3 times in one night, and I quit in humiliation. But, what's that all about? Why don't girls get to play hockey and boys play ringette? And I know I'm coming from a point of view of somebody from the 70s or 80s, because I have a friend now who's got a daughter and a son in hockey, and they both play hockey, and the boy plays rep, and he's 13, and mostly 13-year-olds on that team, and there is one girl, because you have to try out for that team, and I guess no matter what gender you are, if you're good enough, you get to be on that team. I just think dividing, sports is supposed to be fun, and as someone who grew up gangly and geeky and uncoordinated and, very bad in gym class, I think there were things that I could have done that I would have, sometimes I think I could have enjoyed sports more, or activities, or physical motion more, if it had been more about fun, and less about, I don't know, not competitive, because I am a competitive person. I've always liked playing competitive, doing competitive. I was on the debating team and stuff like that. I like competing, but I don't like gendered activities. It makes me mad. It really makes me mad. The last part of the question was, would you play on a men's, women's, or co-ed team? And that's, like, to me, there's no such thing as men and women and like, to me, it's just people, right? And there should be just people teams. And ideally, if I were to play a sport, it would be on a co-ed team, but I hate that word. It's stupid. You shouldn't have to say co-ed. It should just be a team, a team of people who are interested in swimming. Oh, I have one other quick story to add. When I quit smoking in 2000, after 14 years of smoking, I was very, very, very angry. And a lot of people tell you that there's a lot of fury that goes along with quitting smoking. And I ended up taking up boxing. And actually, a couple years prior, I had taken a couple of boxing lessons because I think I always wanted like a strong upper body. And so I tried to join a gym. I was looking for a place where there was a punching bag that I could use, and no women's gyms had them. Only the male, the Y, and the Y was co-ed. And again, I hate that word, but the YMCA had a heavy bag, and the YWCA did not. Not that I would have joined the YWCA anyway, but I remember I joined the YMCA, and I used to punch the crap out of the heavy bag. It felt really good. Really was very therapeutic, and I really grew to love boxing, but I remember the gym. The Y was actually a really good experience because men and women, it's very community spirited. There's not a lot of like people there who are, buff and like gym rats or whatever, like people who make you feel bad about yourself because maybe you're fat or flabby or weak. Or it was always a very good experience. I really recommend the Y. I enjoyed the Y a lot if you're going to join a gym or do something athletic. As for team sports, I don't know. We're just going to have to maybe leave it at video games. Farmville. Oh, I gave up Farmville. I finally quit after a year and a half. Anyway, I hope that's hey, I'm going to keep it short this time for once in my life. And under 15 minutes. And I'll see you guys next week. Have a good week.